Hello everyone, welcome to the final session on the Smart Stage at the end of day one, EventTech Live US and Canada. We're in for a real treat on this next session because we have Mark Johnson, the CEO at eventcore, joining us to give us a fantastic case study. Now, this is titled Trusting the Experts, how experienced partners collaborated with support on CES 2021. Just like everybody else in 2021, CES had to pivot to virtual, and Mark and his team helped make that happen. Mark, welcome to the session.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that warm introduction. And, I've been struck by the word pivot. And I think, like many people, pivot is a word that if I could sort of eradicate from my language for a while, it might be good. Not because it's not an impactful word, but it's one that, I think people are finally like, come on, let's get back to the business of being who we are. And let's get back to doing the good work that we do. And so it was an amazing pivot. I appreciate the introduction.
You're welcome, mate. And I'll take my talent off and I'll take that word out of my vocabulary now. But mate, the floor is yours. Looking very much forward to hearing how you help CES. Over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to open up on a personal note and share some information because I want to set the stage for the context in which I'm giving you this presentation today. I think that one thing we all learned through the pandemic was the importance of being real and vulnerable and really taking in what's happening in your life and not letting that sort of block what's going on in the workplace. And I'm going to apply that same logic to this presentation that I'm doing for you today. The background is, and the setup is leading to that I had intended to go through and memorize this. I don't know if you can see that out there, this deck, this presentation, and all these words to go through my deck. That didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen was that my dog, my best friend of 13 years, passed away on Saturday morning. His name was Juno, and wrong picture. There he is. That's Juno. So life happened. That happened this weekend, and I spent the first few days getting my kids squared away and really helping them and being there as a father for them to help deal with their grief and express their emotions and be who they are as people. And then they went back to school yesterday morning, and everything just, bam, hit me like a ton of bricks. And so as I tried to get ready and memorize this so that I could share this good information with all of you, to be honest, it was difficult to focus, and it was difficult to, quite frankly, not shed tears. It was difficult to remain in the moment and not think of the dog. So I say this again because I want you to know something that's really important to me as CEO of eventcore, is that we honor who we are as people. And we honor everything that's going on in everybody's lives that they're bringing to the table, that they're bringing to the screen, that they're bringing to the office if they're fortunate enough, and people are fortunate enough to come back to the office these days. And that matters. And as we go through the new year and we think about how we're going to approach our work and getting back together as people, let's not lose that side of us where we've agreed and have sort of come to a covenant with each other that we're going to be more open and vulnerable and really be available to show up fully. So with that being said, let's get right down to it. I'm going to do something a bit different and just go off some notes and an outline I made for myself. But today's presentation is about a group of organizations coming together, collaborating to put on what is recognized as the largest, perhaps most impactful live event, and in this case digital, that takes place on an annual basis, and that is the Consumer Electronics Show. So a quick backdrop. About halfway through 2020, the Consumer Technology Association approached Microsoft. And the reason why they approached Microsoft was to ask Microsoft, how did you pull off your large-scale digital events, which they had done so supremely well? And I'm thinking about things like Microsoft Ignite. I'm thinking about things like Microsoft Build. And as CTA contemplated this challenge that they have upcoming and moving CES to a digital world, they thought they'd go to an expert, and they went to Microsoft, and Microsoft said, hey, look, we can help you. We're happy to engage and help you. But part of the deal is that we want to bring in the suppliers that we work with from an event technology perspective. And fortunately for eventcore, my small company up here in Seattle, Washington, in the northwest corner of the United States, had been in service of Microsoft for quite some time. And for those of you who don't know eventcore, I'll forgive you for that. We fly under the radar a little bit. We're an organization based out of Seattle that produces event technology registration specifically. And we hyper focus on registration at this point in time, and we feel we do it amongst the best in the entire industry. And our perspective about registration is a bit different than what many organizations bring to the table, in that we build custom solutions for every event that we engage with and every project we come in contact with. In other words, we design our logic of our registration to match the logic of the customer. And we do it in such a fashion that it becomes almost irreplaceable for the customers that we work with, in terms of how ingrained we can become and how essential we can become to ensuring that they don't make any compromises in the way they employ event technology in support of their business model. And it's something we're really proud of. And we've been doing that with Microsoft for quite some time. So getting back to CES. So Microsoft is working with the Consumer Technology Association. They bring in vendors like eventcore, a good partner of ours, Opus Agency. There's many others. I'm just going to focus on a few that are most familiar and closest to our team as I talk about how this collaboration mattered in the delivery of our work and the end product for CTA. There were three big challenges for the team as it came together. As you can imagine, volume and scale is one of the biggest challenges that we faced. Because as many of you in the audience know, when I'm going to use the word, forgive me, pivot, when the pivot happened, events that usually may have seen 5,000, 10,000 attendees, suddenly now are seeing numbers in the neighborhood of 50,000, 100,000. For one event we did for Microsoft, there was well over 200,000 attendees. These are numbers that are absolutely off the charts, and it's fantastic. But getting back to it, it's volume and scale. And the team of partners working collaboration of this event needed to be keenly aware of what that meant and along every step of the path and how that was going to impact the work that we were doing. Another thing that this group dealt with was a shortened time frame. We got involved halfway through the year. The world's largest, or at least historically largest event that was going digital was happening roughly 6 months later. So for the planners out there, for my fellow event tech vendors, for the suppliers of every type, I know you appreciate what sort of pressure that compressed time frame can bring. And then obviously working with multiple suppliers. I've mentioned ourselves, I mentioned our good partners, Opus. There were many other event tech and service organizations involved with bringing this event to life. And here we were challenged with bringing the largest event imaginable to life in a digital environment. And I got to tell you what, I'm gonna give a quick spoiler alert. It went off extremely well. And I know that as CEO of eventcore, I'm super proud to have been associated with that, with CES, and super proud to have worked with the suppliers that we worked with. So let's talk for a little bit about what made it work, and what some of the sort of interesting things we had to do were. One thing I wanted to point out for CES, it is not everybody can attend. You have to be approved to be an attendee of CES. You have to have the right credentials. You have to come from the right type of organization. They just don't open up the doors to the public and say, anybody who wants to pay, come on in. So, invitees had to be vetted. They had to go through a process that was somewhat challenging to translate to a digital environment in order to verify that each one was allowed to attend. And so we created a process to manage interest and sort of process those requests quickly. we needed to do that in such a fashion that we weren't doing that in a silo. We needed to make sure that we were on the same page with every other supplier who was touching that, who had a part of that. And more importantly, we needed to make sure that we were in lockstep with our customers, our clients at the Consumer Technology Association. So I'm happy to say that this collaboration, this group of people that came together, worked extremely well, and were able to manage that in such a fashion that all the requirements were met. The timeline, prioritizing goals and getting all the stakeholders and build rapport amongst everybody was really important. And really having people be able to figure out and focus on what needed to happen first, right? Because it's that old adage that if you have a complex problem, you can't think of the entire problem at once. You have to break it down in pieces, right? And you need to think about what needs to be done first and focus on that and get that done. Now, I know as event planners and event technology people, we're always long-sighted, trying to keep the end goal in mind, and that's really important. But in a situation where you're under time pressure, you have a lot of new groups brought together at once, and you're dealing with a really complex set of business requirements, you really do need the ability to be hyper-focused and really collaborate strongly with your team on the task at hand in order to be successful. So we leverage an agile process in order to make that happen. We used up-to-date knowledge and built that into the check-in process. We kept all stakeholders informed and allowed edits to be incorporated as they needed to be. And we always considered the downstream effects of pivotal decisions that needed to be made. CTA, new CES, meaning the association, clearly understood the complexities of CES. Eventcore and our partners knew digital events. So, when that group of minds came together, it was really important that there was a shared vision and that we always were cognizant of what we were discussing today, the effect it would have further down the road, and try to imagine the outcome of a particular work stream or thought process, action and result, so that as we got further down the track, nothing happened that would throw us off, that we go, gosh, I wish we would have thought of that way back when, because our life would have been much easier today had we done that. And there were also some new hurdles, and constantly anticipating what could happen and, trying to be prepared to avoid those hurdles. There was an entire new authorization system that we had to put in place for this event, which required prolonged testing. And as a group, we were fortunate enough to have our customer and our partners all on board with that prolonged testing process, which was really important. So let's talk about the title of this presentation, how experienced partners sort of collaborated and got together. And I realize in my discussing here, I've not been forwarding the screen, which is quite all right. I'm going to skip forward a few slides and fix that right now. At least I had every intention of doing it. I can't tell if it's doing it or not. Yeah, I'm not seeing it move forward, but that's all right. I'll just skip it. It's actually okay, everybody. Trust me. Oh, there we go. There was a bit of a delay on my end, and I don't know what it looked like on your end. I'm going to wait for it to catch up here 1 second. Okay, well, this is one of those things that happen, and I'll just float with it. So here's the deal, thinking about CES and how we collaborated, I thought I was actually going to take this time to talk a bit about the importance of partnerships and what that truly means in a situation as I just described to you. Here's the reality, that as you get into a relationship with a group of partners, no matter what the project is that you're undertaking, everybody needs to understand what the ultimate end goal is going to be. And everybody needs to have a shared sense of motivation as to how to get to that end goal. In other words, if the end goal feels like something individual, if the end goal doesn't have a shared vision with your other partners, then you're almost certainly setting yourself up for failure. And I think a lot of time people get into a relationship with the idea that a partnership is going to end up being fruitful for everybody involved. And it can look really good on paper, but in reality, when the work starts, if there's not a unified vision as how to execute on that and what the mutual benefit for all parties will be, it certainly is not going to work out. So, as I've been CEO of eventcore and the time I've spent in this industry, which has been now, I hate to say it, a long time, I, I have been down the path of forging relationships and partnerships with other suppliers, and many of them ultimately don't end up going anywhere. And in this case, in the case of CES, I'm using this as the poster child of the good that happens and the great things that come of people who have a unified vision and get on the same page with that vision and work as true team members. As any relationship in life, including the one I had with my dog Juno, it is a matter of understanding what you need to contribute, how that contribution in that relationship is going to produce you and you're the person you're in relationship with the results that you're looking for. So professionals always work well with others and they support the program, the interests of the program and each other in that light. And understanding and respecting expertise of each party and what that brings to the table is so essential and key to the successful implementation of any project, that I couldn't possibly respect that enough. And I think when you have mutual respect, it sort of alleviates and removes the fear for everybody about questioning every detail, or actually it removes the need to micromanage every situation, which really is important when you're up against a big heady timeline and a big heady project. So, going back to our work on CES and our collaboration with the customer and with Opus Agency, and I haven't spoken in much detail. Opus Agency is based out of the Portland, Oregon area here in the U.S., and they really are a first-rate organization agency. And we partnered with them for a long time, whereas they provide many of the services and project management. We provide much of the technology to bring to bear. And they are the type of group, and this matters with every technology partnership you enter, that you fully believe and understand and know for a fact that they have your back, that they share the same goal as you, and that they understand that there's going to be problems that show up along the way and are committed, even before it starts, to solving those issues. And that's the exact type of relationship that needs to be pursued as you're thinking about who do we work with, both from if you're looking to hire a group of vendors or if you're looking to go in partnership with another company to solve a big problem or to deliver on a big event, as it was in this case. There is no line or separation between our two organizations, and there is no point. Everybody shared the same sense of accountability. So I would implore each of you out there watching, as you think about how you're going to work in concert with another company in order to get to an end product, that you put the relationship first. And once you do, I think you'll find that everything else you do from that point follows and falls in line. So, I like this went a bit off script, and I appreciate everybody hanging in there. I think the best thing to do at this point in time might be to roll it back and see if there are any specific questions I can answer or any additional insights I can provide about the work that we did on this project. But before I kick it back over, I just wanted to say publicly thank you to the Consumer Technology Association. Thank you to Microsoft. Thank you to Opus, and thank you to every organization that partnered with us on this truly amazing achievement. So let's move back and see if there are any questions that came up along the way.
Mark, thank you very much for a very honest and open insight, I think, into both your own experience of working with Microsoft and Opus and obviously delivering for the event, but also, how honest you have been about how some partnerships don't work out. And I think that's something I want to really dig into a little bit more. But before I do that,
Yeah.
as a dog owner, as a previous dog owner, and someone, my condolences to you on Juno,
Thank
and
you.
many of the attendees have also passed on their condolences.
Well, thank you. Thank you,
Partnerships.
everybody.
I think everybody's a dog lover here by the looks of things, Mark.
Yeah,
Partnerships, that clearly was the core key component to actually making all of these technologies and all of these companies and individuals coming together to make CES what it was, right? The event existed before, great event. They needed to do something different in 2021. Maybe they'll continue to do that into 2022 and onwards. I hope they do. But it sounds to me like actually the key component to that from what you were saying was just how tightly knit and everybody on being on the same page from a supplier point of view
correct.
was. Um, do you think that's going to be a key component in events going forward from a hybrid perspective? Do you think that's going to be the kind of the secret source of events being really successful and actually suppliers not vying for position and this is our role and this is your role and that's your fault and this is your fault and all that kind of stuff?
That's a great question. There's a couple of angles I think of in response to that. The first one is eventcore is typically part of a best in breed solution when we go to work with the customer. In other words, we're not an all-in-one provider that has every piece of the stack from end to end. And if a customer chooses to work with an all-in-one provider with an end-to-end solution, I mean, one would argue that suddenly you eliminate the need to have so much collaboration, if you will, in the mix because it's just one provider. However, in a hybrid environment in this digital age, as we think about both an in-person and digital experience happening simultaneously, inevitably you're going to have multiple groups and multiple stakeholders and different vendors at the table who are potentially delivering different pieces of that pie. So yes, I think that the advent of hybrid is going to, I don't know how it's possible to have it be even more important than it has been historically, but I do think it's going to be imperative that organizations get this right. Not only do customers make good choices about selecting companies who work well together, but the providers make good choices about who they go in on work together and who they choose to partnership with, because if it was paramount before, it is absolutely stratospheric today, the importance of this. So yes, I do believe that's true.
I have to agree with you. And many organizers over the last 12, 18 months have asked me very much initially, like, which platform should I choose? Which vendor should I choose to put my business with? Who can I trust with my
Right.
event? My first reply to that question is, well, what you need to do is you need to approach them as an extension of your team. Can you do they feel
Yeah.
like part of your company, part
Yeah.
of your ethos, part of your vision? And that's really, really important because that relationship is that glue, that bond, isn't it? And the technology and everything needs to be on point. But if you don't have a really strong partnership and relationship with your vendors and all of them, no matter what they look like, that can be the real kink in the armor that ultimately lets the event down or things go array. So I think you're absolutely right on that. And
That's
to the
true.
all-in-one platform versus best in class, I think it really comes back to the budget and the objective of the event.
Of
But
course it does. Yeah.
I personally do like the best in class scenario. It's a lot more work. There's a lot more in depth in it, but it's just like, the guys that are running Formula One cars or something. They choose a partner for tires, a partner for the fuel. It's the best of the best of the best to ultimately make that kind of go forward and really
I
fast.
love it. I might
Um,
I might steal that with your permission. That analogy, that's
Absolutely.
really well stated.
I've been I've been using cars as the analogy of like virtual events because you have pickup trucks and vans and taxis and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff, and they're all fundamentally the same thing, but they do a different job depending on your
agreed.
objective. Um,
Agreed.
One final question from me though, Mark, before we wrap up, and this is something that there's people that say registration will be something that we don't have in the future. People will just kind of sign up to events or access events and things. I don't necessarily believe that myself, But if I was to ask you to look into your crystal ball, what kind of the key components or what are the things that you are really looking forward to that registration will give us as event organizers and as agencies and things like that?
Let me answer it this way. The name of my company is eventcore, and it was a very purposeful and specific name chosen because we view data, registration data, as the core of any event. And our job is to securely, efficiently, and elegantly intake this data so that it could be shared and pushed out to all the other systems that need to consume it. And I'm thinking about not only event technology systems, I'm also thinking of marketing solutions, for example. So somehow there needs to be a central repository for all this data so that any person or any tool that needs access to it in a secure manner can do that. So there really is no way that the function of registration is going to go away because that initial intake needs to happen. Now, it could be a whole nother conversation we could go on about the method in which this happens. You know, the choice of technology. Is it suddenly you're going to show up and smile in a camera and that essentially is going to have you registered? You know, it seems crazy today. It may not be in a number of years. So the method, the old traditional sort of fill out a form, show up, wait, scan something, get a badge, one could say that it's a possibility that that sort of paradigm is going to shift and there's going to be a different way to accomplish that. But the bigger issue about collecting data about who's there, and I don't mean that in a way like, you know, we need to keep track of everything. No, I mean, it's important for people there to be recognized, to opt in, to be acknowledged, to be authenticated, and to then have the system start working. And that's where eventcore comes into play. And we do it in a way that I think rivals any other solution that's out there. So thank you.
Fantastic answer, mate. And I do agree with you because I think we need that registration data. We need to be able to understand the objectives of the attendee at the event and utilize that to actually
Absolutely.
personalize the experience for them, make it a better experience for them, and all that kind of stuff. Um, Thank you very much for coming on and give us an insight into you working with all those other partners, Opus, and the team at Microsoft and CES. Really looking forward to what you guys get up to with them going forward and all the other events that you're working with. For all the attendees that have been watching today, or during this session now, please do reach out to Mark and his team. I'm sure they'll be happy to discuss your events with them. And we will see you tomorrow in the first session of the day. Mark, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks. Really appreciate the opportunity.